Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome to Breakfast with Dan Walker and Louise Minchin.
The headlines for you this morning. The government admits a lot of work needs to be done to meet demand for COVID tests, and it will prioritise health, care workers and teachers.
Tougher penalties for serious criminals as an overhaul of prison sentences is unveiled.
Moving on, without their best friend, Ellie Gould's classmates share their memories of the teenager who was killed by her ex-boyfriend as they start a new chapter of their lives.
Good morning. Your holiday might have gone on hold over lockdown, but the cargo kept coming and going, more so than ever, in fact. I'm looking at why the freight trade is flying, even when most planes are grounded.
And another very warm day across the southern half of the country, but things are cooling down from the north. I'll have your full forecast here on Breakfast.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 16th of September. The government has admitted there is a lot of work that still needs to be done to get the testing system back on track.
Speaking on this programme, the Justice Secretary Robert Buckland said NHS workers, social care staff and teachers are likely to be prioritised. But critics say the delays to testing could have been predicted and need to be resolved.
This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We know that when you start mixing children again, inevitably coughs and colds, we're going into winter, they're going to get temperatures, they're going to get snotty noses, the demand is going to go up. And the fact that this seems to be a surprise to the government and the testing system really beggars belief from our point of view. So the idea that it's going to be several weeks before we get this sorted is just a disaster for the NHS.
Every day we have conversations with government partners and officials, which I have to say are really helpful, but we raise these matters, we raised them again yesterday, and we actually said we need a more honest conversation with not just the Bolton public but the country, because clearly there is a problem. And I'm glad to say that the announcement made yesterday by the Minister was very helpful, because at least people know that this is a national problem that needs to be resolved.
Well, that was the situation in Bolton this morning. Our political correspondent Jonathan Blake is in Westminster for us. Jonathan, the Justice Secretary has admitted that there's a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to testing at the moment.
Yes, I think there's no question that this is the biggest challenge facing the government at the moment. The strain that we've seen on the testing system and the problems that ministers face in increasing capacity and allowing people who need tests to get them. Now, with the lockdown restrictions easing, schools opening up again and summer turning to autumn, the demand for tests is increasing hugely, and the system at the moment just isn't holding up to that strain, as you've seen and heard the stories from many people who've tried and failed to get a test in good time in the last few days. Now, on this programme this morning, the Justice Secretary Robert Buckland made it clear that the government was, in his words, working hard to increase capacity, but didn't deny the scale of the task.
We are working night and day to improve and increase the capacity and the turnover, the turnaround, which is so important for families. The demand, of course, has picked up as schools have come back and as the economy comes back to life. This is a huge challenge. The Health Secretary has set out his bold agenda on this, and we're putting the resources in to deal with this. Yes, there's still a lot to be done. I'm not shying away from that for 1 minute.
Now, it was interesting to hear Robert Buckland there say that his constituents were telling him of the problems that they were facing in trying to get coronavirus tests. So ministers, as with every other MP, will be getting it in the neck from voters about this particular problem. So they'll be well aware of the task at hand. But we've heard the warnings that time is tight, and the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, saying yesterday that this problem will take weeks to fix. We'll get more details soon about how the government intends to prioritise tests. We know that NHS and care home staff will come first. After that, we will see. The Prime Minister later will undoubtedly face questions on this, first in the House of Commons at midday for Prime Minister's questions, and then later on a sustained, detailed session of questioning from senior backbench MPs on Parliament's Liaison Committee.
Jonathan, thank you for that. Good to speak to you. Thank you.
There will be tougher penalties for serious and violent criminals in England and Wales under new measures being formally announced by the government today. The overhaul of sentencing laws will be outlined in a government white paper and will include extra mental health support for those found guilty of less serious offences. It comes after the criminal justice system ground to a halt during the coronavirus pandemic.
The rate of inflation in the UK fell sharply last month. It dropped to 0.2% from 1% in July as the effect of the Eat Out to Help Out scheme pushed down restaurant prices. That's the lowest inflation rate since late 2015.
President Trump has issued a disaster declaration for Oregon, one of the states worst hit by the wildfires raging in the western United States. The action makes federal funding available to help mitigate the disaster. Tens of thousands of people have been displaced. Entire towns have been destroyed by the blazes in California, Oregon and Washington. Smoke from the fires has now spread right across the country to New York.
Barbados has announced its intention to remove the Queen as head of state by November next year. The Beijing government said the time had come to fully leave the colonial past behind and become a republic. The Caribbean island gained independence from Britain back in 1966.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.